This
Yeah,
is the time we start. I'm going to hit this button. Let's see this button work. All right, this is the time we start. I'm Scott Stimson with International Computer Solutions, and you folks are our computer club from San Carlos. Welcome and good morning. We're happy to have you all here with us. I have pushed out the link to the document of potential or possible topics. I will share it one more time to make sure it's out there. If you haven't gotten it, picked it up from your email, you can pick it up from the chat link. I just stuck it in our in-call messages. That's what that's called. And I've got a couple of news topics I thought was interesting. But other than that, it's fairly light. So we're interested in any topics that you guys want to bring to the table. And Google Lens is definitely one of the ones we're all interested in. Paul, you were saying that you've been using it on Facebook as well?
That's right, yeah. People will post, well, I belong to a couple things like what's this bird and a reptile forum. And so I use it to identify the animals. Because these people are on the East Coast and they show, 6 salamanders and 8 snakes and don't name them. And I'm not familiar with them, so I can find out what they are.
Found this in my backyard, and it's Paul's neighbor. He's like, well, what is it?
well, on Nextdoor, they post snakes all the time. The people find, but they never can tell you what they are, of course. So
No,
you
they
can
just
zero in on the snake.
Hey,
Huh?
we use Nextdoor. I've never seen a snake on it, but we are in Alaska.
Is that L-E-N-S or L-I-N-S?
L-E-N-S.
No, Google Lens, Lens.
Oh,
Oh,
We
you
have-
weren't on? You weren't on, Chester, when we did the Google Lens. It's the best thing since sliced bread.
Okay, but it works if you're using a 2-button mouse. I don't know how to do it with on Apple because you use a right click and one of the choices is open in Google Lens.
If you're on a Macintosh, just for all your references, if you're on a Macintosh and you need access to that second button, you can hold the control button and click the 1 button. And that'll bring
or
up...
you can use your mouse if you're working on a MacBook.
Well, if you've got a 2-button mouse.
I do.
Yeah, but
Otherwise,
if you're
But I can't use Google Lens on my MacBook. It doesn't work.
you're in the Chrome browser, but it won't work?
Oh, I have to be in the Chrome browser.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
In
I
fact,
don't use that very often.
well, actually, you know what? I take that back. That is not what I double-checked. I double-checked that Google was my default search.
And
so,
Google is not my default search.
well, I had DuckDuckGo for like
Me
the last
too.
year, and it doesn't appear as an option. It doesn't show you that you could use Google Lens at all. But when you switch your default search engine, then it becomes available from the context menu.
Okay.
And so I'm sorry, I did not verify that you have to be in Chrome, but I did verify that you have to use Google as your default search for it to work.
How about if you take your Apple mouse and turn it around and use your middle finger on the button? Does that work?
What would that do, Paul? You're fingering a 1-button mouse. You still only have 1 button.
Whatever that means.
It's right click.
It's right click. No, there is no left or right click on a Mac mouse. There's the button.
All right.
The button. Your trackpad has the button too.
I'm sorry to hear it's inferior like that.
Input devices. All what people care about on their computers. Well, I have to say, I'm going into, 4 weeks of this new M1 Mac, and I am so happy with it. It's doing everything I need it to do. I started playing around with virtual machines now. I've got a Windows 10 and a Windows 11 installation running in a window on the computer. But one of the things that I'm really enjoying about it is I'm doing this, and I got a a dozen other things running in the background on different desktops. And I don't have to shut any of that stuff down to be able to do this, participate with you guys, and stream out to YouTube and record at the same time. Whereas before I had to shut all the extras down just so I could do this. And what's great is I keep doing it every day. I reach over and I touch it because it's doing so much work. And it's not hot at all. I never hear the fans come on. And I have pushed it to the limits of the capacity of my old computer, and it's done wonderfully for performance. I know I sound like an evangelist, but I'm just excited to be able to be using this technology versus the Intel platform.
It's not hot because you're in Alaska.
That's right. That's right. Well, it does have this active cooling system. Like, if you can imagine, Macintosh, Apple has put out computers now, like the MacBook Air, that have no active cooling system. The only thing that keeps the chip cool is its design to let that passive air passing through it. And so what happens is it has to throttle it at some point. And this is a really big deal in the 86 architecture, like your PC chips, the Intels and the AMDs. You can't cool those passively. They are way too hot. But Apple's design is more similar to a Volkswagen Bug that would be air cooled versus the Intel's muscle car that would have to have real cooling available at any moment. All the chip designs. Hey, Jim, I saw you jumped on there. Good to see you this morning. All the chip designs, they have the ability to slow down, to cool off. This is just a common modern chip now. We've been doing that for 20 years, where whether it's Intel or AMD or it's Apple Silicon, or it's in your phone, some ARM RISC chip that you're using. As it gets hot, it slows down, and even more so with those with passive cooling, because it doesn't have any other way to cool off than to slow down the processor. And so this hasn't even gotten hot enough to crank up the fans, and that's what an active cooling system does. An active cooling system, it sees it getting hot, and instead of slowing down, it turns on the cooling fans, and it regulates the amount of airflow that goes across, or water flow, because there's water cooled, but that goes across the chip to maintain that balance of safety and speed.
So all of your accessory computers, are they hardwired to the new computer?
They are. Everything is... the webcam...
I'm not hearing any sound. Does anybody hear sound?
Yeah.
Yeah? You can't hear me, Judy? Judy?
Hello?
No, she can't hear us. We all hear you. I can hear you. Maybe disconnect and reconnect. Somebody else want to talk and see if Judy can hear them?
Judy, can you hear me?
Judy, can you hear me?
Judy, are you there, Judy?
Judy, 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 can
I
you
can't hear
us?
anybody.
Can you hear me
I'm
now?
going
Can you hear
out
me
and
now?
I'll be back.
Okay.
We could have done the mime thing, guys. All of us just going like this.
Well, that was no joke. That's exactly what she was getting from us.
No, do it when she comes back on.
Oh yeah, yeah. Can you hear us now, Judy?
We can't hear her.
No, we can't hear you.
She's mic'd right there.
I said Scott was totally gone on mine.
Oh,
No picture, nothing.
Interesting. But now it's
Yeah.
all good.
Yes, now it's all good. You were just bragging on your your new Mac, and then it went zzz.
So we were talking about the peripherals being connected, and one of the reasons that I was interested in this computer is because it's the exact same form factor as my old computer. And so I did, because it offers USB-C. It's got two USB-Cs and it's got two USB-As. But because I'm accustomed to having four USB-As for all my equipment, I had to buy two different adapters. I had to buy a USB to A that I could plug a hub into, and I had to buy a USB-C to VGA so I could plug it into one of my monitors. The other monitor has got an HDMI connector, and that's included with the Mac, so that took care of that. But yeah, two adapters, everything exactly the same environment that I've ever worked in. In fact, it's a little boring. I might have mentioned that before, because I restored it from a time machine backup of my old computer, and basically everything was here. It's my desktops were set up the same. The artwork was on. I've told you before, I have 6 desktops. The artwork is one of the ways I use to indicate to myself which desktop I'm working on. Is I use different pictures on the desktops, and then I know which desktop I'm on. And so all of that came across without any question. My mail set itself up. I guess I had to. There's a couple of passwords I had to put in, but everything was pointing to all the right stuff. And one of the real nice things about a Macintosh computer is it brings your apps over, even out of your backup. And so all my apps came over and installed themselves. But then that was a strange experience, because my computer was so old. There were versions of my apps that were out of date simply because my computer was out of date and it wouldn't support the latest versions. So they brought over the apps and then immediately started doing all these updates to the apps I had. But I think the only really confusing thing that I've had so far is Microsoft OneDrive. And it was working, but every time you went to it, it would freeze up. It would slow down. You get the beach ball, the spinning beach ball that a Macintosh gets. And it had an update that you had to do manually. It couldn't just update itself. And after that, everything's been beautiful. So I'm very pleased with it. Oh, go ahead, Paul. Sorry.
I'm like a techno juggler.
I'm just disappointed because I'm not going to have the same experience in Tequila's, and it's getting close to the time that we're going to be going back.
Oh no. So is that computer going to stay in Alaska?
No, I'll take it down with me, but that's an interesting question. I haven't decided what to do with the old one. And the old one has got an SSD drive in it that's full of my data. And I'd actually like to have the drive, but it's a real pain in the ass to remove from a Mac Mini. It's a real operation. It's a fragile, delicate operation to get it out. It's not what you think of when you think of PCs, where you just open up the hole and disconnect and close a door. It's none of that. And so I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do yet. I kind of feel like I need to remove it and take it with me, but I definitely don't want to. I don't feel like I've got the time to mess with it.
When do you plan to return?
Well, we were just talking about that. I think I'll be back in San Carlos by the 20th of September. We will be here for another 2 weeks, and then we go to Portland for a few days. And this company I'm doing work for in Arizona is asking if I will come in and do a day or two at their office. And so so I don't think we'll be heading down until, or I'll definitely be there by the 20th. Or hopefully I will be.
And when do your folks leave Alaska, or are they gone already?
Oh, they're here. They'll probably be here till November. They typically stick around and come back, or stick around until almost Thanksgiving.
So how late is the bed and breakfast open?
Well, we're almost closed.
Is that right?
Yeah, in fact, we're shutting down half of what we're doing today. because we just don't have the guests.
Is that typical or is that unusual?
Well, one of the questions is what's usual these days?
Okay, before the
Yeah.
plague,
Before the plague, our standard was to stay open until the 15th of September and then take the next week to shut everything down and put it all right. And this being our first season back since COVID, I wasn't certain what to expect. I didn't want to. You guys know that when it's not bed and breakfast, we use them as rentals. And so I didn't know what that kind of market was, whether we would. I didn't want to affect like a month's rent or 2 weeks of rent with the potential of having a guest, right? You have one person come in for one night, and you have nowhere else to put them in, so you can't make the apartment available to the long-term renter that we're expecting. And so this season, I decided that we would be done that first week in September. And so consequently, we moved everything up a week so that we could put it all together, get it ready for rentals. If this is any other regular season, I'd be returning to San Carlos. Well, I'd be returning to the lower 48 about the 20th, 22nd, something like that of September. And instead, we're going to be returning to the lower 48 on the 14th. Well, enough about me and my computers. What's going on with you guys and your computers? Do we have
mine
any?
seems happy today. Mine's happy.
Yours is happy? That's great. Is there any?
My headphones keep connecting and then disconnecting, whatever that means.
Okay. Jim, this is interesting. You've got them working, though. Whereas last week you didn't have them working.
Yeah, well, they work on my iPad, and I can get the sign to come up and say connected onto the this computer that I'm on right now, which is a MacBook Air, and then they just connect and then disconnect.
So, but you're listening to us now.
Yeah, but I don't need the headphones to do that.
Oh, well, there was one other thing that I was going to share with you that I haven't paid a lot of attention to, but I've recently just been playing around with it and learning a little bit more about it. And it's this multi-point connection for Bluetooth headphones. And what this does is it allows you to be connected to your phone and another device at the same time. And
Mine seems to be like that because it says connected, and then it says connected, and then it says disconnected. But I'm still connected and I'm talking to my my iPad, which is like this. And here's the phones. Whoops, there it is right there. That's them. And there's the buttons. Ooh,
yeah. So
okay. All I got to work with.
if I could excuse myself for just a moment, I have a customer asking me some questions. I will be right back.
Oh, okay. Well, kids will play.
So we'll talk amongst ourselves.
That's great. Hey, where are you, Jim?
I'm in Colorado.
Colorado.
Yeah, we're going to be here another, probably about another month, and then we're going to start back down, and we'll probably take, a few weeks kind of meandering, and figure we'll cross the border around the first or second week in October.
Oh, yeah.
How
It's
about you
pretty
guys?
warm there.
Yeah,
Warm and humid.
Warm and humid. Oh, we had a humid day. We hated it, but mostly it's around mid 20s here every day.
Judy,
Yeah, I think San Carlos will still be drying out.
Yeah.
I have a question about the drying out. Judy, you said the Loma del Mar Road, was that just from the heavy rain? Like, I'm not in.
Well,
Did
it
you-
flooded.
Yeah, but you're really high. So with the flood water was from the rain. It wasn't from something overflowing kind of thing.
Well, no, the arroyo was full. And then it came down the road as well.
Mhm.
The road that goes towards town goes progressively downhill.
Right.
Right.
But you guys have an aurora behind you, or
Yes.
like? Oh, okay.
Yes, and if you saw the pictures of the truck that was overturned in the arroyo, that was behind Loma Del Mar, and that's where the young man died.
Yeah, he was a kid, what, 17 years old?
17, drowned.
New driver, and he figured.
No,
he
no,
could-
no, 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 no. It was a big old pickup. It had several people in it, and obviously he either got knocked out or couldn't swim.
Oh, he wasn't the driver.
I don't know.
Oh,
Didn't ever say.
I don't either.
huh.
But there were several people in the pickup that got rescued as well, and then this guy did not. But no, there's a big arroyo that comes off the mountains and
Mhm.
goes behind Loma Del Mar. And during Jimena, it breached the walls of Loma Del Mar and poured mud into several people's houses that are on the back road.
Oh wow.
I didn't.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is this towards Nakapuli Canyon, like that road
Yes.
that goes to the
Yes.
ranch up there?
And well, you know where they put in the big vado, the big dip,
Yeah.
as opposed to the two culverts. They took those out and put in a big dip,
Mm-hmm.
a vado. So that's where the pickup was swept off the road and overturned.
Wow.
Those culverts got clogged with vegetation, and then that
Right.
flowed everything through Loma Del Mar.
Right.
So Scott, do you know how your house was? Like,
Wait, you know, Yuya and Bibiana are there now, and I'm not big about broadcasting it because I know other people have had horrible experiences, but we've
I
been
know.
very fortunate. There was nothing planned about where we decided to build our house, but we survived the hurricane back in 2008 with just no damage whatsoever. And there's an arroyo right behind our house, and that's why I feel a little bad
I know.
telling
Little
people
guilty.
that, yeah, because there are people 2 streets away and they're like digging their cars out of 3 feet of mud,
Wow.
and they're having to replace furniture and beds and because they had water in their house. And just something about the area that we chose to buy and build in, the water just goes around us.
Lucky
And
you.
if you've seen the pictures of San Jose, it is truly horrific. Those people it's really, really, really bad. My housekeeper's sister had 5 feet of water in her house.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and it's almost a little worse than 2008 because at least Guaymas got some real national attention because
Right.
of the hurricane, but there is no hurricane associated with this. This is just a lot of rains.
Well, the
I
rain,
read
it didn't
too
rain a
that
lot.
Hermosillo was getting a lot of rain last week sometime. A lot of rain, it looked like.
Yeah, folks were kayaking in the streets.
Yes.
Think how bad San Jose was during Jimena.
I don't know. I don't remember.
Oh, it was terrible.
Was it?
We handed out food and everything. And, over in, I can't think of that town. It's on the way to Empalme, where they set up all the tents down in the baseball field. And
Oh, yeah.
the mayor had him take them down because he didn't like the look of it from the highway.
Oh, geez.
Where was it, Bill? Fatima or Fatima.
Fatima. Yeah.
Right. That's where they set it up in the play field. They set all these tents up for everybody. And he didn't like it.
Well, I know Yuya's been involved with the church that she does work with, and they've been making those bundles of supplies and handing them out to people.
Plus,
Right.
I'll make another pitch that you can donate if you want through Castaway Kids. Just write for flood relief. Where it comes up when you're going to donate, it says, "What's this to be used for?" And you can type in flood relief or whatever, if you care to donate.
Yeah, I think I would be, if we had just picked a different place to build our house, we live in an economy where we'd be going out getting baskets like that.
Mm-hmm.
We're just fortunate enough to have bought in a safe place from the Arroyos. And
Yeah,
no
there's an
pl-
Oriole not very far from you, one street over, I think.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's just serendipitous. It was not planned. We didn't realize the way the water. We knew we didn't want to buy in an arroyo, but we didn't know how well protected we were until we had that major flood.
I was wiped out twice.
Ugh.
From rains and floods, Chester?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the '08 one also got my bodega. I had 3 feet of mud in my water and mud in my bodega, and the current was so strong it just wiped everything out of the house into the backyard.
Wow.
It was not fun.
Mm-mm.
Well, a couple of years after Imena, I was driving around by the north end of the golf course, in that property there where there's a lot of houses built up on the hill. But I looked down into the floodplain there, and they had all these lot marks to sell lots in the floodplain. So I don't know if people built there or not, but could have been a problem this time.
If they did, they should have done it on stilts.
Yeah, like Florida.
Yeah. All right, well, what about some computer topics? Is anybody out there having a computer issue? Happy to answer any questions. I brought a couple of topics I thought you guys would find interesting. Specifically, I thought Chester would be interested in this battery stuff. If you guys haven't looked at the document of possible topics, I put an article in there. And I know this happens every so often. They come up with an alternative battery formula. This is from MIT. Batteries made of aluminum, sulfur, and salt. Safe and low cost.
Those are pretty common components.
That was the point. That was the point of the project, was to design a new battery that could be made low cost with resources that are readily available, mostly because of how scarce lithium, how much is involved in dealing with lithium. And they're praising this as being a battery technology that actually benefits, the charging actually benefits from heat, which is unusual for batteries, because normally you think of heat as being very destructive when you're doing the charging process. In fact, I think I would, I've done it before, if my phone was doing busy stuff and I could feel heat coming off of it, I might want to figure out what that process is. I might not want it working so hard, especially if I don't know what it's doing. But at the same time, I probably don't want to charge it when it's hot like that, because that's when it seems like you damage these lithium ion batteries, is when you're trying to put charge on it and it's at a higher than acceptable temperature. Whereas this process, this battery, seems to be better when hotter. In fact, it says it right there in the article. It says, they can not only operate at high temperatures up to 200 degrees Celsius, like 392 degrees Fahrenheit, but they actually work better when they're hotter. At 110 degrees Celsius, the batteries charge 25 times faster than they did at room temperature at 77 degrees Fahrenheit, or at 25 degrees Celsius. I know we've got a mix of Canadians and Americans, so I'm mixing it up. But that's amazing. I've never heard of batteries behaving that way.
That's going to be a big change if they can pull that up. But I don't think they could travel very well like the lithium ones. I'm not sure.
Well, it'd be interesting to see because they're immediately talking about it for electric vehicles and for charging stations. I'm not sure exactly what that means, if they want to be able to store electricity at a charging station. Maybe that's a thing. The way electricity costs these days, maybe there's a real benefit to have a charging station that could charge a storage battery at the cheapest rates and then be available during the expensive rates without
Yeah.
having to be on the grid.
I think that's it, like trickle charged.
Those components would be very lightweight, make a lightweight battery.
Well, we're going to have to keep an eye on it because we've seen stuff like this before. I'm sure Chester could comment on it too. The universities come up with, and this is another way we could use batteries, and we all get really excited about it, and then there's something that doesn't allow it to progress, and we're back to our old battery technology.
That's basically what I've read on, but somewhere, sometimes somebody has to come up with something to beat the current battery situation. It's just untenable.
What is that term? There it is. Dendrites. Dendrites is what is formed in a battery that causes it to stop being healthy. And it's from cycles of charging under poor conditions and just time, because batteries, though they've become very stable, they have a limited amount of use. Most batteries get warranted for about 300 full 100 to 0% recharges, 100 to 0 to back to 100. And when you've exceeded whatever that time limit is, then your battery starts forming these things called dendrites, which is flaws in the battery material. And those flaws stop it from being able to accept or produce a charge of the same capacity as when it was new. And that's one of the points that they make up with this new technology, this new idea, is that it avoids creating these dendrites. There's some natural benefit of the salt in the electrolyte. I'm reading it right here. It has a low melting point, and it has this just side effect. It naturally prevents the formation of dendrites. So theoretically, even as this technology progresses, maybe we don't get the same capacity out of it as we did other technologies. Maybe it takes longer to charge. I don't know. I'm just speculating. I am just viewing what we might see coming down the line. But what we might be doing is building batteries that never have to be replaced. So yeah, maybe you have to plug in your phone again in the middle of the day for 30 minutes so that you can make it to the rest of the day. But all of a sudden, you never have to worry about replacing that battery. A pair of headsets, or even the battery for your car. Well, and I actually think of that as, we don't talk about this much, but we've got part of this inflation stuff is the ability to buy electric cars at a cheap rate. You get some credit from the government that helps you buy a new electric vehicle. And one of the frustrations I see with that, I think you only can apply for it at certain income levels. Like somebody at my level would probably qualify for buying an electric car as long as all the parts come from the United States.
But that's the real complication of the law, is that the parts, including the battery, have to come from the U.S.
Well,
and
that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's because everything's made in China.
Yep.
And so it's supposed to incentivize the development of these technologies in the United States by creating this incentive to want to buy those kinds of cars, ones that have their parts built in the United States. Now, this might be a direct result. This research is coming forward as a direct, like we could start pursuing a whole different style of battery technology and base it here in the United States for production. The point I was going to make, though, is I don't think those credits are available after a certain income level. And if you've got, have any of you heard anything about that? It seems like I read something about that.
That's true. I think it's 250,000 income for a married couple and 125,000 single.
And it's not just electric vehicles. It's things like supplementing solar installs and things like that to incentivize this change and make it easier for people that don't have money to burn. Now, my problem with the electric cars, though, is that battery is 2/3 of the car. And right now we don't have a good replacement battery. I mean, you're essentially replacing the car if there's a problem with that battery. We've heard horror stories in the news about Teslas who are outside of their warranty and the battery has gone bad, and they get quoted prices that are easily 2/3 the price they paid for the vehicle when it was new, just to replace.
There's also a problem with disposal.
Precisely, Chester. Yeah, exactly. So somebody with my income level may qualify for that credit and the car may exist, but just the nature of the car doesn't make it realistic to me. I drive a 23-year-old vehicle. I expect it to run tomorrow, and I expect it to run the next day. And if it breaks down, I expect to be able to take it to my mechanic. I can still buy hoses for it. I can still buy gaskets for it. I can pull parts out of old cars. And so somebody at my income level, it doesn't make sense for me to buy an electric vehicle, even if they're helping me with the cost, because there's a good chance in 5 to 7 years that vehicle is going to have battery problems, and there's no solution for that right now. It looks very interesting. I want to create less carbon in my world, but when you've got these batteries that are so hard to dispose of, and they cost 2/3 the price of the vehicle when it's new, I have no incentive to buy an old electric vehicle, and I have no incentive to work out how to buy a new electric vehicle, because when I buy a vehicle, I'm not going to let go of it for 10 years. Or 20 in this case.
I have a Toyota, and I had to replace the battery at the dealer. So I went to the dealer, you know.
This is an electric vehicle?
No,
okay.
Conventional car.
Okay.
It cost $550 for a new battery. That was $450 for the battery and $100 to install it, because it's a deep draw battery so that the damn car will die and restart at a stop sign. And I always disengage that feature because it just bugs me. When it restarts, it feels like somebody ran into the back of my car.
Judy, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Again.
It is a very stupid idea. And I too disengaged it every time.
Yeah. It's pure annoyance. And I asked the mechanic at the dealership, can you guys pull the wire on that? Oh, no.
But oh yes, they can. Ford has now come out with their 22 models that is an option on their car.
Oh, good.
Auto start stop. So it's coming.
Well, from what you guys say, the only thing I have problems with is a $400 battery. Really? I mean,
Yeah.
that was the solution.
And I later found out that I could get them a lot cheaper by going outside of the dealership.
Oh, sure.
You know, I mean,
I can see that. That's so true with many things.
I used to drive Volvos, and their parts come in a blue and white box. And one time I went to buy a piece for my car, and it was in the Bosch green and yellow box. And the guy at the parts department said, "Oh, we haven't changed the box yet." But if I'd gone somewhere else and bought the Bosch part, I'm sure I would have saved 20%.
Yeah. Well, I foresee the future in this respect going down at least two different paths. One is, God, I hope a technology like this actually develops and it's realistic for us to use that for battery technology in a vehicle It sounds like it's less dangerous. It sounds like it's easier to build. It sounds like it's easier to it sounds like all the right things that we want to hear in battery technology. And that's why I don't believe it's going to happen, but I hope it does.
When I was a kid, there was a technology that came out, and it was for D-cell batteries, and you could unscrew them and fill them. And I think it was sugar that was and then screw it back in again, and you could. This was a reusable battery, and it sounded like a great idea to all us college students. And then big story. Union Carbide bought it from the patent from some kid who had invented it, and it immediately disappeared.
Wow.
I never heard it ever taken from there. It just you didn't
Jim,
want
I'm making a note of that. I want to do some research. I'd never even heard of such a thing.
Yeah,
There's got to be something on the internet about that.
So the lithium consortium will squelch this new battery.
Maybe.
Well, yeah, no, that's, carburetors, fuel injection. There's a whole story there in the industry. I think the other path that we might see ourselves on, and this is the one I think is most realistic, is we're going to figure out the budget for a vehicle for every single person that needs to have a vehicle. And we're going to have a vehicle that can be leased at an income level, regardless of what your income level is. There's going to be a monthly fee, like a service. Your vehicle will turn into a service. And so you will end up always having a car that you don't have to worry about the battery going bad in over 5-10 years. You will have a different vehicle each time because you never actually own the vehicle. You're always leasing it at some rate, some monthly rate that matches up with your economy.
There's a protocol for a battery that goes into a electric car, and it just comes from you can hook it in, almost like plug it in from below. They're heavy, big things. You have to drive over a pit and raise them up like this. And I think it was a Canadian who invented it and said, okay, this is a great idea. The world can have it. I don't want to patent it, but want to let it out. It never came to any fruition, but you would just own your car, and the battery was a leased battery that you just paid for what you used, and you could just pull in, drop one battery, put the other one in. It was like a 5-minute procedure you might have to line up. It was sort of like an oil change at one of those quick lube places.
Yeah, that sounds like the way I imagine we're going to go with this is something like that. A whole car or built so the battery can be easily, but a service. It's like a subscription service for batteries.
Yeah, well, there's a whole area of investing in transportation as a service.
Yeah,
it's like the Uber and rental cars and things,
Well, and that's really the other thread in all this is how many people really need a vehicle 100% of the time. I know that my kids' generation, they don't even think about driving, and most kids that age would be thinking about it being an app. There's an app for transportation. And
there's a car share.
I need a car.
Yeah.
There's a car share program where you, if you're not using your car, it's rented out to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of guests this season that have been using that. I'm forgetting what it's called.
My
Turo?
Yeah, my brother-in-law and sister just rented a car here in Colorado that way. Car share.
Yeah, and it's very much like an Airbnb, but for cars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
how do they access it?
It's delivered to them at the airport.
And it's a ride share thing? Like do they
It's
have
a car share? No.
Car share.
It's a car share.
Yeah, you can take your vehicle and you can list it to be shared with people on a calendar the same way that you list rooms in your house on Airbnb. You would list your car on this service.
Oh, my insurance company would love that.
I'm sure you have to get special insurance for it, sure.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Turo is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Find your drive. Explore the world's largest car sharing marketplace.
Could you spell that for me?
Puro.
Also, there's quite a few articles, one from Zhang from Virginia Tech about sugar batteries.
Oh, cool.
So,
How many more minutes? We got 4 minutes left.
yeah, but I didn't know how to share it. So, if you just look up and use DuckDuckGo, it comes, if you type in sugar D cell batteries, there are quite a few articles about sugar batteries.
Great.
Look at this. In Phoenix, Arizona, I can rent a BMW Series 3 2016 for $53 a day.
Nice cars.
My sister and brother-in-law ended up with a Honda Civic. How, I don't know, but they had to put his golf clubs in the back seat. So that's, you know. But they said it was a very nice car.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. We really do live in. We're on the other side of all of this, but we're living in a world where the whole sharing thing is a thing. We share everything, and so it's not surprising that we would be doing this as well. It looks like you could survive without a vehicle under your common experiences, like going to work, going to school, even traveling. Of course, our situation, traveling back and forth from a foreign country to and from, it still doesn't seem to make any sense for that. It seems like we still need our own vehicle to do that kind of travel.
Here in Colorado Springs, they have these little scooters, and you pay by the minute, I believe it is. And then you just drop it wherever you pick it up and drop it wherever you want to. And then they go around, they have trackers on them, and they go around and pick them up and take them back to their locations.
Gee, Bill, I just found us a Tesla in Edmonton for the 3 days that we're home in December. We can drive a Tesla around, only $411 for 3 days.
Probably Canadian dollars, right?
Well, I would hope so. I'm on the Truro, Edmonton, Alberta.
Yeah, not real dollars.
Yeah.
135 a day.
That'd be about like 100 US.
We have less than a minute to go.
Oh, let's switch over to the other meat. Thank you, Judy.
Cool.
Thanks for keeping track of us, Judy. All right, here we go.
I've got the other one up. I'll meet you on the other side.
Actually, I'm not keeping track. There's a little stopwatch down at the bottom of my screen that keeps track.
Well, yeah, but you're watching it, and we weren't.
No, it pops up on my screen and says you have less than a minute to go.
In case anyone is interested, I recently took a flyer on a little stock that is working on an electric vehicle solid state battery. It's Quantum Scape, SCAPE's.
Escape. Okay. And what'd you say this was? This is another solid state battery technology?
Yeah. All right. I just gambled for the fun of it. It'll either be a loss or it'll be one of those Apple type stocks.
We'll be able to say we knew you when.
Beg pardon?
We'll be able to say we knew you when.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention it. It's kind of fun. It has to be something that is developed, or this electric vehicle thing is just going to die.
Yeah. What's the name of that stock again?
Quantum Scape.
I've got it on my screen right now. Here, I'll drop the link into our in-call meeting.
I'm not recommending it. I just telling you about it.
Because we're having all this battery talk. I'm going to put it on our document too.
Is it lithium free? Is what they're doing going to be lithium free, I wonder?
I think it is, and people like Bill Gates and other guys like that have invested in it.
Oh, yeah.
So far, I've been in it a couple of months. I've made about 30%,
Great.
but I'm looking for 500%.
Ah. I didn't think you were a risk taker anymore.
I'm not. This is just for fun.
Fun is always risky. You know that.
Right? This is Chester's version of going to Las Vegas and playing the slots. Just for fun.
Right.
I have to tell you of a photo I saw. This friend of mine sent it to me, and it was a public electric car charging station, and it was attached to a diesel generator.
Right.
So if you wanted to charge your car, your clean car, you ran this diesel generator.
Now they're really taking like the field of dreams approach to these electric vehicles. I I understand the philosophy behind it. It's like, let's get there. We're solving two different problems at the same time. We're trying to create a technology that is renewable, and at the same time we're trying to build devices that'll take advantage of that technology. And they're definitely a lot further with the electric device than they have gotten to replacing electricity with something. And you end up with experiences like that, don't you? Oh, you look at it and you're like, boy, I hope it's biodiesel.
This is kind of an aside, but do you know where the word Tesla came from?
From the man's name?
Yeah, I assumed it was Nikolai Tesla.
Yes.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Tesla was the inventor of the alternating current motor.
Oh, yeah.
And
or generator.
Basically put Edison out of business, and which went to, I think, one of the other major electrical companies. And Tesla had a royalty opportunity, and he gave it up, and died a pauper. But he's responsible for all of us having alternating current.
Yes,
he was a big
built the
presence
motor.
here in Colorado Springs.
Oh,
His lab was here.
During the fight over AC and DC, Edison tried to debunk AC, saying that it was dangerous. And to prove that, he had a public display where they electrocuted an elephant with the AC.
That's correct.
I love
and
those
also
stories.
One of the first uses of the AC current was the electric chair.
Well, you hear these stories from that time period. They go to state fairs and they do exactly that. Edison would be electrocuting animals with AC current to show how dangerous it was. And you hear these stories about Tesla, and Tesla would come to the same fairs, and he'd do things like make lightning bolts dance across his arms, right? Showing how safe AC could be. He had
a Van de Graaff generator.
What is that, the Tesla coil?
The Van de Graaff generator just builds a tremendous charge, low amperage, high voltage charge at the top of a dome, and then if you get near it, you shunt it.
Well, they have a lot of science museums. Your kids can do it. It makes your hair stand on end.
Yeah. Yeah, and in Colorado, what his lab was trying to do was to provide wireless electricity. And he had he could shoot a bolt of electricity for miles. I think he started in New York at Niagara, and he could shoot a bolt of electricity through the sky for a couple of miles. Very impressive dude. Died a pauper and his best friend was a pigeon.
Well, that pigeon would have been electrocuted by the lightning bolt
Right?
if he accomplished it.
I don't know if you guys saw the other news article I put in our document, but we've just had a ruling in Ohio over monitoring students. And so what has happened is that because of COVID, we have a lot of remote learners. And when they're doing test taking, they need a system for telling whether there's cheating going on. And so what the schools have adopted is kind of what's been adopted in the workplace, is a methodology for monitoring behavior during a test, and specifically a room scan, where periodically throughout a test, your webcam comes on without your permission, and it just looks at what's going on in your room, so that if there's any question of impropriety, they can go back to that room scan and see if maybe they're looking up the answers or somebody's taking the test for them or whatever it might be. And so just recently, an Ohio judge said that this needs to be stopped and has stopped it in their state because of privacy issues that conflict with the Constitution. I thought it's very interesting reading. It's not a short read. It talks about the case that was brought is one particular student at the university who felt like his privacy had been violated because he was taking a test in an area that had his tax documents out, and the camera was capturing all this private information that it's not supposed to be able to have access to. And I can't help but think this will set a precedence as we move forward with this kind of technology. I don't know if we're going to have regulation or not, but what it does do is it really enlightens you to where we're at with this kind of technology. And one of the topics, if we haven't talked about it before, is this is going on in the private sector for business, because we have so many remote workers now. I don't have the article in front of me, but I read one last week that was talking about a worker that discovered that the methodology of the monitoring that was being imposed on her as a remote worker was very similar to the same kind of thing that's being imposed on Amazon warehouse workers, with an app that keeps track of exactly how many minutes they're working. And what is happened, there's this gray market now in the United States for devices that will mimic your behaviors and fake out this monitoring software so that the monitoring software thinks you're being productive. And they're called mouse jigglers. And the rule of thumb is the physical mouse jigglers are the best. And what these are devices that have like solenoids in them. And if you have to walk away from your desk, you'd stick it on your mouse, and it would bump the mouse cursor around, or you'd stick it on your keyboard, and it would tap keys every so often. And that's the best way to fake out these monitoring programs. There are also software mouse jigglers, and you can see them. You can find them on Amazon. That is just a little USB dongle that you plug into your computer, and it periodically makes the computer believe that there's some activity happening with the computer to give the monitoring software the ability to or reflect that you've been working. This is a topic I think that's going to end up growing, because we're just starting to realize exactly how much monitoring our businesses are doing of their employees. And in the case of the article I was reading, what she discovered, she'd gotten hired during COVID, set at a specific hourly rate that would end up with like this salary. I think she was around $100,000 a year, and her first paychecks started coming in, and they were lighter than she expected them to be. And what she discovered was that every time she got up to go to the bathroom or get get a cup of coffee, this monitoring software would have the opportunity to take a picture of her not working. And I think in her specific circumstances, it was set to like every 10 minutes check on the productivity of this worker. And so it was making no allowances for 9 minutes. It was making allowances only for that one time the picture was being taken. And she was finding that they were deducting those 10 minutes, even if she had been productive for the 9 minutes, because that picture happened to catch her not at her desk at that moment, they would deduct that 10 minutes from her pay. You can imagine being infuriated and wondering why this is going on. She looks back at what she agreed to, and she agreed to install this monitoring software, and she knew that this is the way. They provided all that up front, but the way it played out in practice caught her completely off guard.
It sounds a little bit like that way that you get cheaper car insurance because they monitor how you drive all the time.
It's precisely that. That's exactly what it is. Yes, and that's what your employer is hoping too. Is they're all looking for ways to save a buck, and so they're not going to pay you for those minutes that you're not working, and they're providing systems, and they're requiring you, if you're going to be hired and work remotely, to allow this software on your systems so that they can monitor your productivity.
Yeah, I had a friend here in San Carlos who used that type of software constantly about 8 years ago. He could actually do his day's work in about 2 hours a day, but they would get upset if he, wasn't active 8 hours a day. So he just had a little software that moved the mouse around, and then he also had other software that could do a reboot of the computer whenever he wanted to, in case they were detecting his IP address.
Well, unfortunately, these all flow together. This being monitored for test taking and being monitored as an employee, it's all the same style of software, and it is a bit of a can of worms when you open it up. It really begs itself to have some real written down community norms for our culture, what we consider appropriate to do in these circumstances. Jim, I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
No, I didn't. I was just thinking about in the old days, he used to have adjudicators, humans who would come and watch you take a test or do something like that. So, and that wasn't foolproof either. In college, there's always somebody who will pass you the book, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I find it fascinating, but it's another example of if we've got the technology, it's going to be used. So as a community, we kind of have to decide what we consider to be proper norms for the use of that technology. And in Ohio, they've decided no, that is not proper use of the technology.
So all of you that have let Alexa into your house should think about this.
Right? Absolutely. Because Alexa is monitoring you all the time.
All the time.
Yep. And
anyway, on that note,
you're out of here, Judy?
Next week.
All right. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye, Judy.
How are we doing for time? Oh, wow. With the computer working so well, to be able to have conversations without interruption and technical problems, I lose complete track of time. I can see that we're getting to the end of our hour, and does anybody have anything else they'd like to add to our meeting? Do we want to go into some recommendations? Does anybody have any TV or movies, books, or applications, websites?
I actually do this time because I wrote them down last night.
Go ahead, Paul.
So I was looking at Netflix, and there was this a 4-part program on how to change your mind. How to change your mind. And it was all about psycho drugs, LSD.
Oh, oh yeah, I saw that.
Somebody wrote a book. Somebody wrote this book, and so they made a 4-part series. So it was about mescaline, LSD, MDMA, and psilocybin.
Yeah,
And it was
I saw the previews for that. That looked interesting.
Big article in the New York Times about it too.
yeah. And then the other one was History 101. And I think us nerds would get a lot out of this because some of the topics were the development of GPS, the development of credit cards,
Oh, neat.
also the development of psychedelics as medicinal therapy, and the development of MP3s and streaming. So that was History 101, and I don't know.
Was that on
I
Netflix?
don't know how many episodes there are of that, but I saw 4.
Is that also on Netflix?
Yeah.
Okay.
I missed the name of the first one that you talked about, Paul.
How to Change Your Mind.
How to Change Your Mind.
I'm typing them into the document as we speak.
And they were very interesting. I'm not up for it, but I can see why people do it. Well, that MDMA is apparently a very effective cure for shell shock. They used to call it. What do they call it now?
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Post-traumatic stress syndrome. People that suffer from that, after they take MDMA, a few days later, no nightmares anymore.
That's great. Well, anybody else have any recommendations for today?
Well, Bill and I have one to tell you about. We're eating our lunch, so the camera is off. But anyways, we had 2 grandchildren with us this week, 2 girls, and we watched. I don't know what you turned on, dear, but it's me.
Yeah, you're there.
Oh, okay. Anyways, She-Hulk. It's the new Disney Plus superhero. And the girls loved it, and our 12-year-old had to explain to me exactly what was going on and how come she was becoming the Hulk and what was happening. But it was great fun. So the 9-year-old and the 12-year-old think it was great, and we got the whole family signed up to do a watch each Thursday night. So She-Hulk.
We're doing the same thing. We've only watched the first episode, but we're doing a remote watch party with Yuya and Bibiana from here to watch this show, and we really enjoyed the first episode. It's very funny. It's a superhero comedy, and
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
We're continuing with our Resident Alien. The Resident Alien is still going on, and the third one is the only murders in the building. I think we've come to the end of the 2nd season on it, but of course they've left something open for the next one.
Didn't Resident Alien just release new episodes for that season? It's the same season, but they finally released.
They come weekly.
They're coming up weekly, like it's on now. Yeah, we're caught up to date on Resident Alien.
It seems like we were sitting waiting to go to the next episode of this season in Resident Alien, and they just started it.
Yeah. And we are trying Ghosts, the U.S. one that's built on ghosts in the mansion. Yeah, it's we're not too sure if we're going to make it through it, but it's kind of a fun one to watch.
Well, I would have recommended She-Hulk. I didn't have my list, though. The one that I've just recently finished I found really interesting is Super Pumped. Have you guys heard of this? This is the story of Uber. I think it's about 9 episodes. I truly don't remember where you can see it. It's probably HBO Max or Peacock or something like that. I used Kodi to watch it, but I'm sure you could use Streamio as well. Super Pumped goes into the character of the founder of Uber, and it goes through that history, the startup, where the idea came from, and all through each one of their controversies, which most of it stemmed out of this person's personality and the kind of work environment he created. I think that it's a good example of startup founder culture. I think that you can watch this movie and you see things that you can imagine are happening in many of these other tech startup kind of old boys or good old boys networks of tech people. But I found it fascinating, and the style that they did it in was very interesting too. The way they would cut scenes together, and they would outline the drama with animations of things that would show numbers and charts, and so that you can visually very quickly follow what the concern was, whatever issue it might be that they're presenting on screen. Super pumped. It's got Jason Gordon-Levitt. Am I saying that right?
Right.
Yeah, he plays the Travis character, the guy that came up with Uber, which is funny because he's not a coder. He's not somebody that writes code. He came up with the idea and surrounded himself with people that could write code. And so he was very much one of these guys that was selling venture capitalists on the idea and growing the evaluation of Uber long before it ever was. I don't even know if does it make profit now? I don't think it makes profit now. I think their whole operation is still based on what they earned off of going an IPO and putting their money back into it. Kind of like Amazon, the way Amazon started out just supplementing the expenses of everything while they were buying up market shares. It's interesting because you watch this show and you get 2/3 of the way through and you're like, I want to delete this app. I'm never going to use Uber again. And I tell you, the end of the story is he gets ousted because they wanted to save the company. They wanted to create a more reputable company culture, and so they ousted the founder to do that, which is apparently very unusual to do for venture capitalists on the board to just throw out their founder, just pay them off to go away, and then go forward with the organization and have an IPO. It raised their value by getting rid of him. Good story. Super Pumped is what it's called.
I will watch it.
Any other recommendations out there? If not, you're going to have to save them for next week because we've reached the end of this meeting.
I'll just jump in on one thing that it was recommended that we download that bird app, and I love it. I've identified birds in our backyard. I'm going to be using it a lot.
Hey, you know what? I wanted to mention that as well this meeting. I was out without cell signal. We were out at the state fair. We went camping in Denali, and I couldn't make that damn bird app to work at all. And it was because I wasn't connected. And so that's something to think about, is if you're going out to an area that doesn't have any coverage, you may not be able to use that bird app, even though you've downloaded the maps and the sounds into your phone. It wouldn't let me start up the app because I had no connectivity.
Which app is that?
Merlin, I think, is the name.
Oh, okay, I have that.
Yeah, it was the first time I was going to try it, and there may be some nuances to it. Like, it was asking me for my email address, and I would stick it in, and it couldn't verify it. But I had already verified it earlier, Like when I was back home, I'd already verified it. I already started playing around with it. And then I end up out where there's no service, and I bring up the app and it wants me to verify my email again, but there's no way to verify it because I've got no connection. Might be a glitch in their design, but I mean, maybe it'll go away with a newer version of it. But it was very inconvenient. I'm like, I've got an app for that. We can find out what bird that is. And it wouldn't work at all because I didn't have cell coverage.
Take a picture of the bird and run it through Google Lens later.
Yeah, later, because you're able to download the audio, whatever the AI audio is, that packet of data for the United States, for Alaska, and you would think you'd be able to run that regardless of whether you're connected to the internet, but that was not the case in my case. I was not able to take advantage of any feature in this app without cell service. So just something to think about with that
You
app.
identify
Keep an eye on it.
any bird on the freeway.
Right, yeah. Well, guys, I got to go, and so do you. I will see you next week at our next computer club meeting, San Carlos Computer Club meeting. In fact, what is next week? Next week is the
September.
6th of September, so it will be the same time, same place. I don't see anything changing except for maybe right around the time period I'm coming back to San Carlos, right around, because the 20th is a meeting. And that's right around the time I'll be trying to drive back to San Carlos. So I may not be able to have a meeting on that Tuesday, but we'll know more as we get closer to it. I'll send out announcements to everybody.
All right, check on.
All right, tech on.
Take care.
Hasta la próxima. Adios. Bye, Paul. And that was it. That was the San Carlos Computer Club. And again, I'm Scott Stimson with International Computer Solutions. If you're having computer issues or need help out there remotely, I will jump into your systems and help you solve your problems. Get a hold of me, Scott at internationalcs.net. And if you like what you've seen here, check out our website at scclub.org. I keep links to all the YouTube videos there. And when we are doing a podcast, I haven't been doing through the summer, you'll find links to it there. You'll find us in wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes Store or what have you, Podcast Addicts, look up. Yeah, but there you go. So until next Tuesday, everybody have a great week and